Well, welcome back or welcome to the Next Level podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and I'm super excited to finally get the wonderful Lee Odess on the show here. For those of you who don't know Lee, I've known him for a long time. We've worked together in a couple of different capacities, and I consider him one of the thought leadership is an overused term, but I think it's apropos here that he's someone who kind of pushes the positive dialogue in our industry, causes us to question the way we've always done things and embrace different ways of approaching the industry, thinking how to bring things outside of the industry into security, and just asking relevant questions and holding that mirror up to ourselves to learn and grow and develop and push things forward. I know Lee, you've always done that with me personally. I've appreciated how our relationship has grown over the years, and I'm really excited to have you on. So
No,
listeners
thank you.
and everyone, welcome Lee Odess.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, John. Thank you for the opportunity. And I do appreciate that you continue to try to create conversation out in the marketplace that's sort of authentically you, which I do appreciate you doing that. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I assume many of our listeners know who you are, but why don't we take a little bit of time and just allow you the opportunity to introduce yourself, a little bit of background, where you're from, and what you do today with the company that you run.
No, I appreciate that. So yeah, so Leo Odess, I'm out of Bethesda, Maryland. I've been in the industry for a bit, primarily around the access control, smart lock industry. I would say I always sort of had one foot in the old, one foot in the new. It's sort of been the where I've spent my career from really even before I got into this industry. Back when I was at Lutron, it was old, a combination of old and new. It felt like in a lot of ways. So building products on that end. So I've always sort of had a marketing, I think, a curiosity around business spin on things, understanding sort of the channel dynamics, the way to communicate, and also I would say like a fundamental aspect of really wanting to understand how digital transformation and transformations as a whole impact industries and products and verticals and people and the rest of it. So really, I spent a lot of my time applying what I would call sort of outside influences into our industry, synthesizing those with our industry norms that we have because it is very nuanced and very different. Try to take a global view and really be the voice of that change that's happening. I talk to a lot of people in our industry, companies, I meet with many of them, talk to people that have an ecosystem side or working with us as well, and try to, there's sort of threads of commonality across those. And I'm just trying to put that together. So we focus on communication, we focus on content, we focus on community, some of it's a branding side of it. Some of it is sort of like business intelligence analyst type work that you'd see. But we're really focused on trying to help anybody, frankly, that wants to see the changes in our industry or be part of the changes, or the new, whatever it wants to be, or, go from the old to the new, really be part of that cohort that's going after the $100 billion opportunity and really would like to be the voice of that change that's happening there.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight and background, Lee. And so there's a few things you pointed out that I want to dig into. One, like there's this overarching, I think, theme in the security industry often of like we've always done it this way, so we have to do it this way, whether it's channel dynamics, whether it's the way certain technology works. And over the last, well, I'd say last 5 years, but specifically the last 2 years, you've kind of respectfully poked and prodded it and not just like nudge, but really opened up the can and be like, look, there's a different way. They like there's different, and whether it's inside of our industry or here's an example of Salesforce or Apple or other people who are not just nipping around the edges, but like pushing
In it.
us to evolve. Yeah, in it, yeah, actively participating. And so how do you feel that those like external dynamics that I think historically we felt shielded from, but like they seem to be actively infiltrating, and not like they're trying to like take over and disrupt and do that, but it's like, hey, we want, like, they're inviting us to the party, and often we see reluctant to participate, but you seem to be kind of plowing a path through to not just invite it, but like connect people too, and move people together. So like, am I Do you agree with that? And then what's the opportunity when we embrace that type of development and change?
Yeah, no, my view is that over the years, there's actually been examples of when this stuff has happened before. Then what I would say, over the past 30 years, 22 years ago, there was something that was seen as new that's the norm now in a lot of ways, right? And you know that because you hear some of the people that have been around for a while say to us like, "Oh yeah, I remember we did mobile, 10 years ago." It's like,
Mhm.
okay. And they did. That's true. Maybe it didn't, see the velocity of attachment rate or interest in that. So it doesn't mean that it's not true now either. But I think there's an aspect, a couple things. So your question is, first of all, I would say that a lot of when we get in these conversations, there wants to be a binary of sort of like it's new, it's old, it's good, it's bad, channel, not channel. When I actually think it's nuanced enough. And
Mhm.
I think the biggest difference is that we're going from a very what I would call predictable industry where the norms were kind of known, the players were really well known. I don't know if we were necessarily insulated from it more than the fact that people weren't that interested in it. And now they are because I think they see the opportunity that our industry and the sort of the where we sit, and I could talk about that a little bit as a part of a larger value proposition that they have. That's not necessarily their core. It's like in a lot of ways, they're starting to see our industry as a feature of their larger value proposition. So
Mm.
that's interesting to them
Yeah.
because it's incremental either to support a different business opportunity they have or it's in addition to one they already have. Whereas historically before, it because of a lot of reasons, it wasn't maybe interesting enough, or it wasn't interesting enough at the time too because they had other initiatives. Like I don't know if I'm Apple, like maybe they were focused on AirPods, uh,
Right.
and or Apple Pay versus first then doing Apple Wallet for access control. Like so, a lot of it's somewhat on the prioritization side. So I do believe that times have changed. I also believe that it's in addition to what we've historically had. We can have, and there's nothing wrong in the high security cottage industry of that $10 billion number that people talk about, and it growing at 3 to 8 to 12%, whatever it might be. It's typically more 7 to 8%. That's a very good business. And I actually think there'll be viable businesses for a very long time out of that. I actually think to that point, if I was some of the companies in our industry that have been around legacy wise, I would even just say, you know what? We're going to be the best on-site system, the best
Yeah.
cards, the best, best traditional that you need will be here for the next 30 years and go be that good business. Doesn't mean that the other one is wrong. And it doesn't mean that they're right either. It just means it's a good business. So I think that what we're seeing is coming out of 2020, when a lot of change you can point to. It's happened a lot before that and that, but you can
Mhm.
point to that as being an inflection point like everything else. Probably a lot of, how we eat, exercise, to do things. Like everything has changed since then. But even this, is that there's an exponential opportunity as the market opened up for new truths to be entered in, new players, new everything. Now you have a choice. You can incrementally add to what you've had for a very long time. And that's where you see, I would call more the legacy side, adding on features to what they already have, which is fine. Again, it'll eat up into that greater space of that TAM of around 100 million, if you want, I'm sorry, 100 billion, if you want to call it that. Some call it 60, some call it 70, some call it 100. 100 is just easier. So call it 100. Uh, you'll get some of that pie, and then there's even a greater pie to be eaten, which is people that build with these things from the beginning. Their architectures, their cultures, their mindsets, things like cloud first, AI first, mobile first, community first, ecosystem first, digital first. Like a lot of these first that in that $100 billion market opportunity that does exist out there, you need these mentalities in order to get it. Now, usually when I talk about these things and I say the word legacy, I'll hear from the legacy player saying, why are you picking on us? And it's not. It's these are decisions. And it's not that one's bad. Like, yeah, I have a point of view that like where I want to work every single day may not be in the legacy, high security, but there's nothing wrong with that. Just like I get aggravated when I hear the legacy guys telling me how I'm wrong because they don't want to work in that area. But like every day that goes by, I find more and more companies that sure sound a lot like what I'm saying or doing a lot of things that I'm doing and are a representation of that. So it does like when you talk about like what do we need? Like I wish the industry would just be a little bit more open-minded to these different mindsets and not get into these sort of camps of like absolutism around because it's been this way, it has to be that way. Just like on the startup side, I wish we'd be a little bit more open to, it's funny because a lot of these startups who say they're going to go disrupt this thing end up being that thing.
Right.
So if there was a little bit of more openness around understanding the norms of the legacy, I actually think collectively together, man, like you can still get your 8% growth of the legacy, but you could also get 100% to 50% growth out of the new stuff. And, you still can get your boat because you still get your bonus, but maybe, that boat will have bigger speakers on it and you can get two boats. I don't know. Like maybe you can buy the lake that the boat goes
Yeah.
into, but there's like opportunity all over the place. That's why it's no better time to be in our industry than right now, ever.
And it feels like such an interesting point around that it doesn't have to be or, it can be
Yeah.
and that and the legacy act, like I see, coming out of the high security background, so there's certain places. Well, I haven't, and as I even say this, I think about a conversation I had just today that's going to argue against my own point that I'm about to make. So I'll include it, is that certain places you're like, oh, you have to have on-prem solutions like critical infrastructure, like an airport. Though I literally just had a conversation today with a cloud access control company who is go putting their solution at an airport, but came to me to help them find a PIAM solution to help manage the identity layer, because they want a software that can handle the identity layer, because they have, old school, insert your legacy on-prem airport solution that's just like Loctite, whether it's ProWatch or OnGuard, just AMAG. There's some that just kill in that space, but you can create an ecosystem of solutions of on-prem and software, to because you don't want to put maybe that legacy on-prem managing your storefronts
Yeah.
inside, right? So there's like, where can I put together and I don't need to go build a different, like just a sidecar cloud version of my on-prem stuff and be like, good enough, right? You can go partner with others, and I think that's how those huge exponential growths happen, when it doesn't have to be a binary bad or good, yes or no. It can be, how do we all go win together with like a customer centric point of view.
Yeah, and I mean, so you hit on a couple of things that are sort of talking points I have currently right now. We talk about cloud in these things in a way where it has to be on-site or cloud, in the respect of like we had one and we now just introduced a new one. So it's like we talk about it like it's a thing because we didn't have it, versus what my opinion is. The quicker we get to saying that it's an architecture, and we talk about solution-based selling, and it's actually about cloud, hybrid, and on-site. Like realistically, most in access control, maybe not in video, even I would even say in video, because you have a camera that even in the cloudest of clouds, video systems, there's a piece of on-site hardware that happens to be going out, usually has some sort of compute of some sort locally anyway. So like it's actually a dumb conversation in a lot of ways, because I think what the customer is looking for, like I don't know if people are out, even this is where it gets confusing. People will be like, I'm looking for a cloud-based access control system. It's that they say that so we confuse that as the customer's asking for it, when we haven't asked the like second and third follow-up questions of what they're actually looking for. And in a lot of respects, they're not looking for a cloud-based access control system. They're looking for the ability to remotely access their system. They're looking for the ability to send keys digitally, versus like those are the things they're looking for. But we've relied on a lot of senses these product marketers or product managers in some respects to go out and research the customers that we've had in a lot of ways, and the integrators that we work with that we've had, and we're almost drinking our own bathwater in a lot of ways, because it's yeah, I'm not surprised when I just saw the thing that a company shared with us that was like, we went out and we surveyed 100 customers around cloud, and they positioned it in a certain way and they asked certain questions, they got certain answers, and now they're like,
Right.
look at the data that came back. And I'm like, I don't care. Like it's like not interesting at all. Because it's you are looking to support your specific point of view that is
Right.
self-serving. And frankly, the person you ask is what's driving that, not the fact that we have too much of that going on right now where we may be asking the wrong questions. We're treating it as a thing because we didn't have it. Where if we all were to take that thing from Men in Black and like erase our memories and come back and be in this industry, we wouldn't probably start some of these companies the way that we're positioning them now. We're only doing it because that's how we've been doing it for the past 30 years.
Well, and you brought up an interesting topic around instead of asking a customer like what problem are you trying to solve, we're saying, well, and you know, you used to say this to me all the time, like, you know, when all I have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Yeah.
So like
It's not my
that
original one, but
right,
yes, we've used it
but
often.
it is a
Yeah.
Leeism that has been shared with me very often. So it's like that's where it's like oh, that smells like a cloud, like, oh, you want cloud, or it's like, or what do you really want? And I, in that same conversation I had this morning with an industry peer, I expressed to them kind of you have operational layer of technology. That's like PSUMs and security operations management software. And then you have what I refer to as the experience layer of your technology. That's the access control that the end user interacts with, right? So that's the credentials, that's the card reader, that's the mobile wallet, that's the experience side.
Yep.
And in the middle, you have whatever's in the middle, right? It's, I feel personally that that's starting to become less and less important. And that's threatening, I think, to a lot of folks of like this concept of middleware with exponential software layers on the top or bottom that make it like as long as the door opens when an authorized person presents their badge or their credential of any type, then access control success takes place, right? And so
Yeah.
over complicating that process flow, I think we get offended when it's like, what about anti-passback? What about lockdown? And what about all these high security features that we've created that again are, and I'm going to get into this in a second, become like product marketing like taglines versus like what actual problem are we trying
So
to solve?
again, I think it's we got to be careful on the nuances because some of that stuff that we think and we're saying isn't as relatable anymore or relevant in that. In a lot of cases, it still is, and that's okay. Also, I think the way I would tweak it is to say that where before we only had hammers and we only had nails.
Mm,
Now we still have hammers and nails, but we have a whole bunch of other stuff too that we
right.
have to put into consideration. So when there is a nail and we have a hammer, then use it. And you
Use
should
it.
go
Yeah.
do that. Like it's just the power structures in a lot of the ways of the decision making. This is where I talk about the high security has been what we've known, self-identified with it. It's been our marketplace, very comfortable with it, highly predictable. It's like an annuity business. It's how it's been, which is great. Problem is now we add in what has always been called alternative access control, which is actually now a greater, bigger marketplace in a lot of ways, or will be. And the question is of when. And we can get into that, my thoughts around that. But it when that alternative becomes the norm, the cottage becomes the cottage, and the rules don't apply in the other areas. So this is where new people coming in, upskilling, new marketing messages, new ways we build, the way we make money, the value propositions that exist, all that stuff there. There still isn't an important piece being the traditional access control providers, but this is also why I believe in the mainstream marketplace, every video company is an access control company, every access control company. Oh, see, this is how I know AI is not ready yet. Every access control company is a video company. Every GSOC company is an access control company, video company, and every tenant engagement application who doesn't want to be an access control company is becoming one. Like, so all of these things, because we're in that midst of disruption right now where the norms are starting to all come together. And for every example that you show me is true, I can show you one that's not, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong and I'm right, or I'm right and you're wrong. It just means we're both right. It's just to what level, to what degree, to what nuance, and I do believe the norms come to play at some point, but a lot of decisions are being made right now. A lot of players are shifting around. Some of the stuff that's opportunistic, which isn't really a business, is happening and it's fine. it's just ugly right now in a good way, because that
Yeah.
ugliness will create opportunity. And that's why, again, it's not a better time to be in our industry than right now. If you're not willing to change, fine, grow at the 8%, the 5%, whatever, be comfortable there. But don't like tell me that the other stuff doesn't exist. I think it's better off as an industry that we say all of it exists, and here's some point of views, here's some thoughts, here's some ways we're going to act. We're going to do things a little bit different. It challenges the trade shows that we've talked about. It challenges the structure of how information is disseminated. It challenges who's, bigger companies, smaller companies, like all of like who our channel is. It doesn't mean that it's wrong though.
Mountain Movers, John checking in with you. And I want to remind you, if you don't know, Apex Performance has coaching and training and online courses available for you, made by security professionals for security professionals to help you take your leadership to the next level. So if you like the content we put in our podcast, if you're interested in learning more about what we do, click the link in the show notes or go to apexperformance.one. That's ONE, because we're number one. Learn more about what we do. Love to work with you. Now back to you. And it sounds like a bit of a, I'll use the term and then I'll correct it because I want to set the stage with it, like identity crisis, but with opportunity, right? So meaning that technology has changed, or the certain, like COVID and other things that have happened, have expedited a level of change that have taken place. And because that uncomfortability it is like we're in the middle of it. um I think natural human activity is to like gravitate to what you know. And so if you're a new entrant, it's we're disruptive, we're aggressive, we're kind of shaking the cage because we see opportunity. Maybe that helps me raise my VC funds, like whatever, that pitch deck looks better when I talk about how no one can do things like us. Whereas there's some protectionism around the legacy establishment around kind of staving that off, or trying to figure out how to like slightly reimagine themselves so that it's like, hey, we can post cool TikTok videos too. We get it, like trying to live in both worlds a little bit. But like you said, it's all messy, right? And so I think historically, we as an industry also do a very poor job of marketing and promoting ourselves. It's always like, hey, here's my 10 by 10 booth, and then here's my one pager, and like that's the extent of what it looks like. You mentioned that you're, kind of one of the things I know that you're passionate about is the marketing, the messaging, the storytelling. So maybe I'm gonna ask you for your opinion a little bit here of like, why are we so bad at that? And then what are some of the current things that are like amplifying that badness, I guess? And then how do we how do we improve? Like if you could wave a magic wand and like get the whole industry moving in a better direction around that, like what should we do
Yeah.
to improve on telling our own story?
So a couple things, and then again, this is where it drives some people mad about this, but so we are good at marketing certain things.
Hmm.
Like, to be fair, like we have very strong technical marketing capabilities. We have,
Yeah.
and we meaning primarily we're talking about manufacturers in a lot of ways. And then our integrators have been historically very good at telling that last mile marketing message in the marketplace. Maybe not billboards and whatever, but different type of marketing, which is word of mouth marketing, guerrilla marketing, position statement type market. Like, they brand great locally. We've never been really asked to do different type of marketing. And it kind of, to draw some analogies, I always jokingly say, like, for those that listen to this in North America or like basketball, or actually after watching the Olympics, it seems to be France. If you watch basketball there too, and Serbia and Australia and some of these marketplaces that have really good basketball teams now. We've historically had 5'5" guards, and now we need 7-foot centers, and we think we're just going to make 5-foot guards into 7-foot centers, and we're not. the best teams have a combination of 5'5" guards, some 7 foot centers, some 6'2" swing. Like you have combinations of the skill sets on the field doing the different roles of what they need. We've just never invested enough into this new type of marketing that is needed. The other thing is that we've historically been a very offline industry. We've been a very print based. We've done trade shows. We've done milk runs. Sales. We've done mini trade shows locally doing education. Uh, you know, digitally, we haven't had to. And it drives me mad. It's like, I always like, I get why we do this, but take LinkedIn, for instance, where I spend a lot of my time. For those of you that are connected to me, you probably know that, and apologies ahead of it, but that's like where we spend a lot of time communicating. But we'll go and take a picture of our, uh, you know, Boston area as is chapter trade show. It'll be a 6 foot table with some stuff. We take a photo, we put that on LinkedIn, and we're like, nailed it. Like we're advertising into that area. Now, I get the idea of marketing socially of like, hey, we're here and people see it, so you go there. But let's be real. We believe that's like we're marketing, and our companies look at it that way. Our companies market right now on digital the same way we've done historically on offline or in Web 1.0, where it was like blogs and it was just about downloading white papers and it was text heavy. We used, I mean, I Unsplash should get a quarter for every and Getty Images for every single one of the documents that they are images of the same people in every single picture because we lack introducing creativity into and making it effective. We're very active, but not very effective. Again, at least they're doing something. There are brands that have figured this out, but I think when I come back to it's like me trying to play golf. Like I gotta practice it, do it, appreciate it, make time for it, invest in it. Also have the realization that unless I put resources, count how many people in our industry, manufacturers have a CMO. That alone tells you that,
Right.
frankly, we don't prioritize it. How many of them have CTOs? Every one of them,
Mhm.
because we see it as value. We have I can count. I probably met every single CMO in our industry, and by the way, VP of marketing is not the same thing. With all due respect to VPs of marketing, you have a role, but it's different when you're a CMO on that end. The expectation, because typically CMO you have a VP of marketing as well that's playing a different role. So if we want to be good at it, we need to invest in it and actually prioritize it. Until then, we're kidding ourselves.
And it's an interesting concept because I joke openly around like still getting certain magazines and newspapers from and like with full page ads. And when I poke and prod at this, I get feedback from some industry colleagues of like, it still works.
Correct,
And I
and it
guess the
should.
misconception is that you don't have to abandon
Oh,
traditional marketing methodologies to try something new. I know, like in my Instagram feed, I get Verkada, I get Genetech. Like I years ago, I did kind of an anecdotal social media assessment of what I deemed of like the top 10 access control security industry technology companies and just looked at their Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, how many followers they had, how many posts. Some of them didn't even own their Twitter handle, which told you everything you need to know. And these are
yeah.
the biggest access control companies in the world, right? So and so I was getting more engagement, number of likes and engagement uh per followers than they were. But it doesn't mean you don't keep doing it, right? Or like exploring it, because I do feel that the and I'd be interested to see your thoughts on this, right? The traditional buyer is starting to change. And so you have people who are at least going to be potentially influenced by what they see on social media. Not that they're going to like click and buy their access control system through
Yep.
Instagram, like I buy random coffee, or I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. But having an omnipresent marketing scheme where it's like, I'm hearing about this thing in a lot of different places. Now I'm interested in it, right? It's so like I feel like there's this like you know, like self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, what we're doing is working good enough, so we don't want to try new things. But then also, like, I see enough people at least giving it a shot and doing a really good job of it. And so I'm curious of, like, kind of like why some embrace it. And I have my hypotheses around it, but like why it's like seemingly universally shunned by a lot of that, not just legacy, but like everyone. Like, you don't really see a lot of folks spending the time and attention on it. Did you have an
Yeah,
opinion on why that might be?
yeah, I always have an opinion on everything. So couple thoughts. Number one, the the again, this is an and conversation, that $10 billion market growth opportunity. In some of those areas, the traditional still works, and you should still invest in those areas. Now, you should be looking at an integrated marketing plan in a lot of
Mm,
ways that is both online, offline, and really omni-channel in a lot of ways. So like, because a lot of these things work together. If you take a look at like our event, ACS, it's an omni-channel event. Like I get online in person for a single day, but I have it in total before, during, and after 6 months worth of content that goes out, and it's all great. Like
yeah,
and the engagement that we get from that is huge. So it's not that you shouldn't do one. You should figure out how to do both in a lot of ways. And you should right size it based off your strategy, your plan, the investment you can make, and the rest. Like you should also hire for it and put people in place to go do it. I love when I get the sort of the questions from some people inbound are like, "Hey, I really would like to figure out TikTok, and how do I do it?" And it's like, well, number one, you don't do it. Mr. 65-year-old person that doesn't have a TikTok account. There's probably 12 people that work for you, or if you have kids, at a certain age, they know, like, go to the people that know how to go do that. This is where I feel like some of the reverse engineering, reverse mentoring in our industry would
mm,
actually work. Like, I think more executives should be showing up to Accelerized. If you want to see how
right,
it's done, go there and you'll see how that group does it. Why? Because naturally they wake up in the morning and they just do it. They don't think about how to do it. They just they do it. They speak, I would love to know how many executive have a WhatsApp group, and I guarantee you it's very little. How many WhatsApp groups do you have with young professionals or people you've met through Accelerate? Probably
yeah,
20, right? So
yeah,
like, if you want to know how to market in WhatsApp or communicate and go to the community, probably go to people that know how to do it. So that's all relatable there. The other part of it is that the way we measure it has to change too, because it's not just about marketing from the product standpoint. Because again, we go back, we know product marketing, so we do that. But if
mm,
we take a look, I heard something recently from a podcast, and then also just in groups of being in marketing for a while. 5% of people are in the buying position now. 5%. 95 of them are not. That 95, that's called branding. That 5% is called marketing. We put 100% of our money into the marketing 5%, right? We put like nothing into the branding side. They say that when that 95% of people that aren't buying do transition to that 5%, 80% of them buy from a brand they know, or a referral that they got from somebody to say they should buy it, and that's who they buy from. So the companies that you mentioned actually understand branding and marketing, the differences. The other thing is they don't just use it to sell product. I can tell you right now, for most young professionals, and I get inbounds from them that say, "Hey, I want to leave my job, or I would like to change, or I lost my job. Where do you want to go?" Almost every single one of them talk about Verkada. They talk about Axis. Axis does a good job. Here it is again. Um, Axis. So they talk about these brands
yeah,
that they see showing up. I just saw one on Verkada, which was their PR and communications department, and the thing had swag.
yeah,
Like you looked at it, and you're like, yeah, that group. A, they're effective. B, it looks like a group I want to be with. So
yeah,
they're building,
yeah,
and they, not just them, but Genentech's the exact same way too. Like they do a very good job. Andrew does a very good job over there of marketing communications. His team does great. But when they showed, I saw a picture of it, and I showed this to some other people too, was like just their digital marketing team in North America. It was like bigger than most marketing departments of most of the companies in our industry, which, by the way, just the fact they have a marketing person, they're not like marketing in sales and marketing in this, they like their marketing says a lot about it. So it also works for that. The other data point I'll give you is I know for a fact I talked to enough people. If you look at my LinkedIn, it's part me, but it's really a lot of it's like distribution channel now of information digitally. I'll put press releases out. I'll repost press releases from some companies in our industry, or they'll send it to me paper wise, and I'll get more engagement and impressions than they do. And it shows the power. It doesn't mean theirs is bad. It also shows the exponential capabilities that if I go to a trade show, and you should, but my expectations of what the return on that investment is are very different than when you go online and you use people like myself and you and other people that are out there to exponentially tell your story out in the marketplace. The brands that are going to be built for that $100 billion opportunity are the ones that are going to put both a combination of the in-person side of the traditional that we've done, and they play with the traditional, but they also are doing the new, and it's not a tension. It's actually, they work in parallel together. The third one that's going to happen now is these companies are going to have to figure out how to do this globally. And that's going to get even trickier at this point. And I'm starting to see it now. There's brands that are figuring out how to communicate globally online and are maximizing a single dollar is getting them like a large percentage of return than they've traditionally done. And it just, the whole thing has to change.
And you hit on something that I want to dive into a little bit around the collaboration and kind of like cohesiveness between these different marketing mechanisms, and maybe specifically around the in-person. And so, we've talked a lot today about the old and the new. The old is like that, in my opinion, this is John's just personal opinion, is that our old in-person kind of marquee events have been this like, these are deal closing events. Like you come there, you meet, you like executives meet, you close the deals. And like that just, it isn't the way it is anymore. It doesn't have to be. Maybe it never was. It was all kind of just like, patting ourselves on the back and saying like, come see, right? And so you kind of have this bifurcation into technology expos, like trying to be like CES or one of those larger ones, and kind of and having that, but then education and maybe networking. And I think, again, with post COVID as the catalyst, this eagerness to be together and be in person, and kind of lean into that community. I'll release an episode this week that I did with Lisa Oliveri, who her and I have been long time like ASIS colleagues and all that. And we talked a little bit about this around, I feel the greatest value of all of those things have been the people and the community that has come out of it, and the education too. But I can't think of one time where I've been like, man, that booth really got me to change my buying decision. And
Yeah.
so, I struggle with the
You're
value
also
of
not the
spending.
buyer. You're also not
But
the
I
buyer.
was, but I was. And when I never went to GSX or never went to ISC and
Okay.
said
Fine.
like, huh, I'm gonna buy that now.
Right. But to be fair, again, we go back to like, there are people that do.
Yeah.
So it's fine. Like for every example you can say you don't, they'll show you an
Yeah.
example where they did. Now you can argue, the percentage that did versus the percentage that won't, but I think that's a argument that
Yeah, that's
doesn't
fair.
progress anything, right? Like, so you're not wrong, but like you also value the networking side. There's plenty of people that don't,
Right.
right? This is why there's some people that value the thought leadership stuff online, and some people find it corny, and they're just there because it's a, it's a resume for them. Fine, whatever. Like, it doesn't mean that mine's bad, yours is good. Now, I can make arguments of like, again, percentages of what people do and how they do it on that end. And I think they're fine. What I don't think is right. And again, I think going to a trade show and having a trade show is fine. You should. It's also what you want to do when your business model is. Their value is around that. Where I don't have any patience for is when you don't evolve it,
Mm.
and then you pretend like you have, and then you create taxes for people, being like, again, I'll go back to, I'll just say it here, it's fine. GSX show, I've been very vocal about it. I will start by saying I see a ton of value in the networking. I see value in the education. See the difference between those two, I said too. But I see minimal value in the trade show. Now, there are people that see value in the trade show. Most of the people that say they see value in it will tell me the historical side of how they've gone there before and they've either bought product or have sold product. That's fine. It will still go on. But if I'm looking at the way the world works now and I have $10 to spend, this show, who is really good at networking, good at education, but let's be real. And I talk to enough people who say this out loud, and I don't even know if GSX people would look me in the face and with a straight face tell me that they don't also agree with this, because if they don't, I think there's a level of lack of self-reflection. Because I also hear about how people talk to the board members and the rest of it that also say this too. So it's like, either I'm crazy and like hearing things, or there may be an ounce of truth here, is that the customer base, who frankly, if you sell space to, that's your customer, doesn't like the trade show at all. They don't see as much value in it, but in order for them to participate, they have to pay a tax in order to go do the other stuff. And then I'll hear, well, if that's a pay to play, you have to. How else are we going to do it? My answer to that is not my job. Like, if they want to hire me or somebody to fix that for them, fine. But that, like, I'm not going to spend an ounce of time problem solving their problem. I'm going to go do. And this isn't a ploy for me to get hired, by the way. No, this is a ploy for me to basically say there are opportunities that I believe that money is better spent than just selling space because that's how you've always done it, and increasing the price because you know your networking and your education is good. So the companies then buy the space, spend millions of dollars to pop up a bunch of product. It is a governor on the evolution of our industry and the velocity of which we can do it. And we're all hallucinating because we then go every single year and pretend and then complain about it while we're actually physically there and not do anything about it. That drives me nuts. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We should. It means they need to evolve. And that's where I'll give. And again, the people say, well, you work with, ISC West and SIA, so that's why you're saying this. No, I do. Yeah, I work with them. I made that decision to invest my time and money there, and they saw value in what I do, so we made a relationship. But that's because they are evolving their platform. I would do the same with GSX. I do it with whoever. Aloha. I would do it with, like, name the brand of whatever. I would do it with them too, because if I see value in it, I will invest in it. It's my own personal preference, by the way. And those shows are evolving and they're trying new things and doing new things. I was investing my own money in those shows before they were doing it. If we remember the lounge and some of the other stuff that you were part of and we did together too, like, these are examples where I just didn't talk about it. I put my money where my mouth is on my own money into that as well. So this is a case of wanting to see our entire industry evolve. And I'm just tired of having what is literally the definition of insanity for historical sake. No, I'm not here for that. So that's my problem.
And I think you raised the point before around the globalization of it too. And there's this really, I think, US focused, North American focused way that shows like that show up. And it's not, again, not right or wrong, it just is. And so it's like, well, then everybody has to come and see us here because it's going to be here, and versus some other way to. And then if you spend all your marketing dollars in one spot, how do you go and grow in other places? And you said something earlier, and I just want to highlight it around, like, the the return on marketing dollars, however your euphemism you want, whatever math problem you want to do, but it's like, what, and it's not how many, in my opinion, like how many badges I scanned when I got people to walk by my booth, right? It's like how can I take that 95% who aren't actively buying and make them more knowledgeable of my brand, so when they buy, they choose me, right? It's like, and again, it's that kind of like omnipresence of like, how can I be in more, like, again, be in the places that matter for that five, but then how do I expand into that 95? And I'm just really interested and intrigued to see the next like year or two of that cycle with these kind of the evolution of the events and shows that are choosing to evolve, and what happens with those who aren't, or do they finally catch on and do something different? Because I think it'll be, um you know, and also I'll say that dollars invested by companies, end users, manufacturers, everybody, are more scrutinized than ever. And so just the fact that we can like the assumption that we'll just rinse and repeat and go to all these things and not just be like, you got to choose one or two or few. Like, I think that's going to become more of a um active role in which one of these things grow, where the value is, and where people decide to invest and put their effort and energy into it. And it won't just be like, well, we've always done it this way, so we're going to continue to
Yeah.
do it.
So a couple things on those you mentioned. There's a lot of shows globally that you don't just like having. There's also a lot of reasons why you wouldn't have like a GSX show move overseas and the rest of it, right? Like it's expensive to do it. It may or may not make sense. North America is still a market a lot of people like to come to these shows, so it's still attractive in that area to go do it. It's relatively inexpensive, frankly, in a lot of the cities they do it in and stuff like that. So like, uh, my view is that I think having a GSX, for instance, we're picking on them, but like in North America or ISC West in North America, and then you have, the security event in the UK, you've got Intersec in Dubai, you've got there was just the sales conference in Australia. Like, I actually think those are fun. These big shows are good too. There's also like a growth of these smaller shows that are really starting to take form regionally in the marketplace because of the sort of nuanced relationships and the customization specifically for that market, especially in the software side, that makes sense. And I think that's good. The other thing that I would challenge some of these is like there's sometimes you become more productive by getting smaller than having this belief that you have to continue to grow in a lot of ways. And like, so I would challenge this idea that like, these vanity metrics, which is like 75,000 people came to the show. It's like, great. Who gives a shit? Like, I want to make sure the right people are at these shows. The other fake metric that people want to do is like, well, if I don't go to that show, people are thinking about a business. Well, shame on you.
Yeah.
Because now in the age of digital media and everything else, like if you're relying on people knowing that you exist or are going out of business because you didn't go to one show, that was true when there was only the time we saw organizations flex was when it was in person. Now,
Right.
like if you that's still your excuse, then man, you've got a lot of problems that you probably should have a conversation about because there is literally no show that should. Everybody should do trade shows, 100%. How you do them, it's up to you. Looking at them as one part of a much larger story of what you're doing, absolutely. Nowadays, every show should be a single, 3 days or 2 days, whatever it is, but should be at least 6 months total of content and information that you're driving brand. With the idea being that I'm there, so like you said, and I said earlier, like when they go from that 95 to 5, they're thinking of me and they know where to go. And it makes my job as an outside salesperson or as an end user doing discovery online easier for me to make a buying decision because I've done the work on discovery. That's what the collective should be versus this idea that we're like, the old diamond fair where you're going to go around and find a new diamond like at the desk and buy it right there. Like, yeah, that happens, but realistically, not as much as we want to maybe believe.
Right. And I think you made a point that, again, I just want to reemphasize, is that we, for sales plans, we have a year long, plan, right? For product roadmaps, we have a year, 2, 3 years of roadmap of like what our technology look like, what we're going to do, growth plans, leadership development plans. We should have the same intentionality around our marketing plan, which should weave into all those other things I just talked about, to tell our story, to say like, so if I snap the line right now and I'm looking at the next 12 months, and the shows should be just pieces on my playing board around that will emphasize the greater vision that I have to talk about myself in a way that's going to do whatever the thing I wanted to do. For most of us, it's probably either that 7 to 9% growth, it's that 100%, whatever growth, I'm looking for. If I'm legacy, I want to be able to control that story about where I am, who I am. There's a couple big companies that have combined forces recently. Their silence is deafening. Talk more about what does that mean? How are we doing it? What is that going to, and just like controlling. And I know that gets harder as you get bigger, right? I was a part of a huge corporate conglomerate that made a lot of acquisitions and combined with folks. And we had this, these, you know, 2 sentence holding statements that we would use when we would get calls from the media about, what we are and what we're not. But I think that's something that we don't have plans for, of like how, the plan is we just pop up the booth, all our salespeople go there, they wear, the ill-fitting polos or the suit coats, and then come talk about our ship for a couple of days, and then it's just a thing, versus being a piece of a broader strategy that has lead up and then follow up into the next thing, with some sort of level of continuity. And I don't know that I hear enough talk about how to strategize around it versus just making it an afterthought.
Yeah, I mean, it's typically, unfortunately, for a lot of people in our industry, it's an aspect of product marketing. It's not
Mm.
seen as a discipline of which we've invested in. The ones that do, you see a clear, very, very, very different approach to it. And until we want to invest the resources and time and money and believe in it, uh, your expected results will equal exactly. It's like as much energy as you put into it, you're probably going to get a smaller return than if you were to really put the forces behind it to put the proper amount of energy. You'll get exponential return.
Absolutely. And so we talked a lot about, as we kind of wrap things up here and land on this, we've highlighted a lot of areas for opportunity, a lot of frustrations that we both share, and things we could do better at. Let's wrap up on a positive note. What are you most excited about in our industry? What gets you, that we haven't talked about yet, where you're like, this is such a great opportunity for us, and really gets you exciting, either something we're doing well or that you see is going to be like a great opportunity over the next 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think we talked a bit about it throughout. It's just like there's no better time to be in the industry than now. And a lot of it has to do with the opportunity that exists. So again, if you believe that we're at this opportunity where it's not just the 10 billion, but the total addressable market of getting to 100 billion, I'm encouraged by the conversations that I'm having globally with a lot of people that are going after that. And it gives me comfort to put my neck out there in a lot of ways to express my point of views of where I think the marketplace is going. So although it may come off that I am being negative about it, it's actually done, and the passion you see behind it is actually because the excitement about just wanting us to get ourselves aligned to properly achieve the opportunity that we have in front of us. It's very rare that you get to be involved in an industry like we get to be in that delivers on the value proposition of keeping people safe and bad people out and the rest, but then also now have this opportunity to increase value beyond that. There's many industries where they have to squint really, really hard to figure out the value that they create. Even if they're making a ton of money, they have to tell themselves stories that say, I'm doing this, so it allows somebody else to do that, which then allows them to do this, which then equals a positive outcome of some regard. Ours is very clear. It's like, this is what we do. Now we also can do this, and we can make a ton of money in the process of doing it. Sign me up for that. So that gets me excited. The next 1 to 3 years are going to be exponentially greater than the past 1 to 3 years. And, there's like a compounding effect that's happening. Like, I don't know if there's a Moore's law of some aspect of how our business is growing and doing, but there's an aspect of this that's like every single day, because of the work that we've done historically, the work we're doing today, mixed with the opportunity and change, is a powder keg of opportunity that I'm glad that I'm at the age that I am to be able to participate in it and also been given the opportunity based off of a lot of privileged things that I get to go do to, to do this, to go to Zurich, to go speak with the Legic team, to then go to Munich to do the Oktoberfest and Bergfest that we're doing there, to go into Colorado, and like being able to do all of that stuff. It's I don't know if I could have done that 10 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like I'm so appreciative to be in the same, like you said it greatly, the phase of my career and the timing of this excitement and growth. I'm so happy that they're coinciding. And I think there, that's no matter, and no matter where you are on the talent and tenure continuum, if you're on kind of the higher end of it, and you're a senior leader, or you're kind of winding down, you get to be part of something awesome. If you're on the low end of it, and you're just entering the industry, you're getting in at a very exciting point, and it's going to be fantastic. I think if you're in the middle of it, the opportunity to help shape it is what excites me, and to like have fingerprints on it and steer it in a direction, is what gets me up and excited in the morning, when we're in the middle of it and being able to participate actively.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Anything else as we wrap up here you want to touch on? Any upcoming events or things that you're working on that you want to let our listeners in on, and kind of where in the world is Lee Odess going to be over the coming months?
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of them. I'll be at Legit Connect coming up. I've got Verkada 1. I'm going to be there. I'll be at Brevo's Cloud Summit. I got AMAG's SES coming up. I'm trying to hit all of them so that I don't miss one that someone signed me up for on that end. But ISE East, we've got the Critical Infrastructure Pavilion. We'll be doing a bunch of different events in and out of the industry. And then also my ask would be is just engage on. I appreciate the conversation and engagement that happens online. So do it. Whereas like people think I enjoy conflict, I don't. I could probably work on my diplomacy when it comes to some of that stuff, and that's an area that I need to work. But it's not seen as conflict. I love the conversation and the engagement, especially when it's done respectfully, which I try to do. But then also this concept idea, you talked a little bit about it. Like there are a lot of people in our industry that, can hold two conflicting ideas in their head at the same time and do critical thinking. And it doesn't need to be binary. So I'm looking for more of the critical thinkers in our industry, and there's a lot of you out there. You included, John, and most of the people that listen to your stuff are going to be looking for that conversation. So that community does exist. You got to look for it. And while it may be easy to shitpost and drive the conversation, the negativity side, and that'll always exist anywhere, it's fine. And it bothers me, but I try not to let it bother me as much as it probably should. But there's plenty of opportunity out there. So my ask would be just engage. Whether you sign up or not for my stuff, that's a whole nother thing. But at a minimum, let's engage online.
Yeah, so I'll link to Lee's social media in the show notes and in our posts, and then obviously the website and all the places you can find you. So
Thank
Lee,
you.
I really appreciate your time. Great having you on. Great conversation. I feel like we could probably do another one. There's so many different topics we could have gone through, but I think this one I found timely because of where we are in the year, kind of some things you had posted recently. It's on my mind, and just, something I know you're passionate about. So appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for being a part of the show and sharing your wisdom with us, and let's go do great things.
I appreciate the opportunity, John. Thank you.
Thanks.